Hello and welcome to the Auto Buyer's Guide podcast. Tim is traveling around the world, currently in Singapore. So, of course, we have Brian with us again here. Welcome to 2023, Brian. How cold is it in Detroit right now?
It's just been hovering in the mid to low 30s for the
Oh,
most
that's not too
part.
bad. Okay.
It's really not bad at all, no. And it hasn't snowed since I was here back in December. But people keep telling me that I should just brace for January and February. And we're in January now, so I'm guessing it's going to ramp up soon. It's going to get colder.
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect. I'm just going to go in cold turkey. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, at least it's better than needing a snorkel, which is the
Yeah.
situation at home for me. We've had 44 inches of rain in the last 3 weeks, and the storms are not quite over yet. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Tiny landslides everywhere, and we'll post a picture here for those that are watching this on YouTube. But the most intriguing one of all is this landslide that came down from this tiny road that's close to the hilltops. I don't know what was going on up there, and the
Mhm.
landslide includes bits of shed and garden hoses and all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm still confused because now there's not as much water coming out. So maybe they had an illegal dam or something up there, and they had a big pond that went boom boom. I don't know, crazy. Anyway, that leads us along to the next most intriguing topic here, which was some of the feedback from our infrastructure video on the EV Buyer's Guide channel.
Yeah, so apparently this is a more hotly contested issue than we originally thought. I feel like people were just going to watch this video and learn something, but there are, of course, other
Hmm.
attitudes and angles to look at it, and we're seeing that on display a little bit. You can dive in a little bit deeper into what all that entails, but it's interesting to read the comments. There's a lot of variety there.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go ahead and toss some of my compadres in the auto industry under the bus here because the thing that I find most interesting in this industry that we are both in here is
Mhm.
the relative inability of surprisingly large number of people that review cars regularly that don't for some reason think about who's buying the car. And
Mhm.
it's worth noting that generally in our industry, oddly enough, the vast majority of people that are reviewing cars on a regular basis don't own their own home, so they are not actually representative of the majority of new car buyers. Actually,
Right.
oddly enough, most auto reviewers tend to have, sweet cherry, used cars in their driveway. They love a classic Mercedes or a classic whatever.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a weird group because the people that are reviewing the new cars are not also buying the new cars. And that does color opinions here and there. I was also shocked in this process because I didn't think about this at all. I assumed that since I bought my first new car right around when I was 19 or 20, something like that.
Mhm.
You bought your first new car when you were what, 22?
Yeah, around
Okay,
there.
so we are not representative of new car buyers
No, no.
at all. According to a study done by Hedges and Company, and I should preface this by saying there's not a lot of good data out there other than some of these studies here. The
Right.
average new car buyer is a male in their 50s with high household income and single family home owning. 93% of new cars apparently are bought by single family home owners.
Now that surprised me a little bit because I would have thought there would have been more of a mix, but
Hmm.
the fact that it leans that way so heavily, I guess that kind of says something.
And this is kind of the origin of my thought process on why infrastructure doesn't matter at this moment
Right.
for new cars. And a lot of qualifiers there. I'm guilty of saying, used car reliability and whatever it doesn't matter to our industry because you and I are in the business of reviewing new cars. Whoever
Right.
buys the car next, it's easy to say they don't matter. They do matter. They just don't matter in the line of how does a manufacturer design a new vehicle? And frankly, they're designing that new vehicle for the new car shopper, which is this incredibly interesting demographic. 48% of sedans, 57% of SUVs, 50% of trucks are purchased by people 55 years old and older.
And I feel like you also have to consider the monthly payments people are putting themselves through. Those are really high right now. I mean, there's been some viral
Hmm.
videos about this, highlighting the $1,000+ monthly payments people are doing for cars because they want this car so badly they're willing to literally drain their wallet each month. Or maybe, I don't know, I just like there's more of that going on than I feel like than ever before, you know?
Yeah, there's a ton of that. And in the new car market, this makes sense because not only is this demographic older and home owning, they're relatively well off. Supposedly, the average household income in the United States is somewhere around $65,000, $68,000 this last year. Bearing in mind that the demographic that's buying new cars skews older, and a huge portion are baby boomers and are retired and living on retirement income, even still, the average household income in this group is $80,000 a year. So we're talking about a group of people that can pay those payments, which is, I think why we're seeing no real slowdown in new car sales, even though those prices are ramping up. But what led me to kind of make a note on this one in a way is that this group of people, they're buying cars that are, $65,000 on average for a new EV. They can afford the infrastructure at home. They can afford to put in the charging structure at home. And that was part of my comment on the infrastructure, public infrastructure not being a problem. The vast majority of EV buyers, they're charging at home, they're charging at work, whatever. They can afford it. This is not a problem. But I do see that there is an absolutely valid concern for what happens next. I mean, you're renting right now in Detroit. So, if you were going to replace the car that you bought new with a new EV or a used EV, this is kind of a double problem in a way for that next phase in life for all new cars in the United States. They're going to get purchased by someone perhaps that owns their home, but perhaps doesn't. They're going to be several years older, so the battery is not going to last as long. So you have this compounding effect of that EV battery. Maybe it did 250 miles when it's new. Now it's 3 years old. Maybe it does 200 miles on the battery. That person may be DC fast charging on a regular basis because they don't have that charging infrastructure at home. And that's going to make that battery wear even faster. So, maybe 3 years later, it can only do 180, 150 miles on a charge, something like that. And now it's 6 or 7 years old. What does that look like? I think that's a valid concern. But then simultaneously for the new car shopper, it still doesn't matter.
Right. And I feel like the average person isn't looking far ahead. But the way I see it is, if compare people right now who are picking up used 6, 7+ year old Nissan Leafs, which have 50 sometimes miles of range, very low numbers. They're picking it up because they know they don't need more than that, and they just want to scoot around town with it, and it's inexpensive. And so I feel like that parallels with what we're going to see 10 years from now. You're going to see Ioniq 5s and EV6s and things like that with 250 to 300 miles of range, a little bit less, maybe being affordable and affordable to people my age, people who don't have too much money coming in, definitely lower than the average car buyer right now. They could afford those EVs because they're behind the times, but at this point, they're so good right now. I think even 10 years from now, we'll still be like, that's a usable EV at $15,000 used. That's kind of how I think it's going to go, but who knows?
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm concerned on maybe on just a societal level. I think it is a valid worry. I'm not to be too Fox Newsy here. Sorry for anybody that listens to Fox News. You probably aren't watching me anyway. But I am concerned about someone that is on the lower end of the income spectrum that maybe does need a 200 or 300 mile range vehicle. And at some point, logically, that may not be available to them. It's going to take a long time for us to get there. I mean, this is a pie-in-the-sky concern because, 2% of new cars are EVs, and that is a tiny, tiny fraction of all the cars getting sold in the U.S. The U.S. transacts 45 to 50 million car sales a year. Only about 14 to 15 are new cars. Hundreds of thousands are EVs. So very small numbers here. But if we logically say everything is going to need to be an EV or a zero-emissions vehicle at some point, this does lead me to wonder, maybe EVs are not the answer for that segment. Maybe there need to be more investment in hydrogen and other infrastructure concerns for that someone that does need to buy a 3 or 4 year old vehicle that's 50% of its cost when new because it's affordable. It's still got lots of years left, but then they still expect it to do regular car things. Speaking of pricey, we have the Defender 110 V8 this week with us.
Ooh.
$110,000 as equipped. It is definitely pricey.
Now, have you had a chance to sit in the 130 yet? Have you seen one of those in person?
I have, but I haven't spent enough time in them. I hear a lot of people are getting disappointed with the third row.
Sure.
But the off-road mission of it does definitely leave a third row compromised. I mean, it's better than the Outlander, so set expectations appropriately.
True. Huh, okay. Well, that should be a fun one. I've seen a lot of reviews of the two-door 90 V8. I actually haven't seen anybody review the four-door, so have fun with that one.
Yeah, the four-door, I quite like it. I have to admit that when the Defender first came out, I was a little sad. I thought, well, this is terrible. They've destroyed the Defender. You know, it's no longer that rough and tumble sort of British Wrangler, which, you know, is kind of a trade in positions in a way for these brands, since Grand Cherokee's always been sort of the American Land Rover, or Range Rover, and, you know, now we have the backwards thing here. But I think that I'm okay with the Defender now, because in real world, Land Rover could never have made an affordable Wrangler Bronco kind of competitor and built it in the UK. It just wouldn't have worked financially for them. So instead, trying to make this a, you know, maybe more rational G-Wagon, a more affordable G-Wagon kind of a thing, just a more rough and tumble version of the rest of the Landy lineup, it does make sense in that respect. The V8 engine sounds lovely. The fuel economy is actually a little better than I thought it would be. We've been averaging about 18 miles per gallon. And, you know, it's very, very sure-footed. It has a very good, confident feel to it. It's been handy, you know, with the weather that we've been having.
And the infotainment, they improved it for the, was it last model year, I think? They've updated some things. Is it better to use now?
It is definitely better now. The display is going to offend some people. Like the rest of the lineup, it has that sort of tacked-on tablet view on the dashboard.
Yeah.
I'm actually fine with that because it gives you a lot of usable storage behind it. And that's probably the nicest thing about the Defender, is that there's storage bins and cubbies and pockets and things everywhere. You can, lots of places to jam your smartphone, your mail as you're picking up at the mailbox, etc. It's a very easy to live with vehicle.
It's a luxury U-Haul that goes off-road.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. It's sort of always been its mission, I guess. My only complaint, I guess, would be the practicality of the swing to the side rear door. Some people love that. Some people might not.
Yeah.
It does allow them to put the spare tire on the back, which saves on ground clearance and makes the cargo area a little bit bigger. But if you live on a hillside or you do a lot of parallel parking, then that's a little tricky.
Yeah, my mom had a 2011 Toyota RAV4, and it had the tire on the back and the side opening door. And I remember she wasn't a fan of that after too long. Especially in the grocery store. If she was backed up against somebody and you were, of course, trying to get groceries in, which, of course, don't back into a grocery store parking spot, but she did and couldn't get it open from the car behind her. Yeah. The car
And
behind her was blocking.
how many times did she parallel park and then open the door and then like jam it into someone's hood?
I don't think there was much of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
that's always been my worry, is like, you know, you're on a hill, you're parallel parking, and then does it stop when you want it to stop?
Yeah, I would assume the Defender has like a damped door, so it does. You know, it does, yeah. Because the RAV4 did not. If you were on an incline, it would just boom jam right into you, because this tire, the whole wheel's back there, so you got all that weight.
Especially when we're talking about like something like this that has wide tires and big wheels on it, etc. It's definitely, you know, it definitely requires some tug to move that. And they're not powered like, you know, a hatch would be. So, you know, positives and negatives there.
Yeah.
So while I was on vacation taking a look at very strange cars in Southeast Asia, and you were moving into your new place in Detroit, CES happened. Run us through what happened.
Yeah, this was quite a car show this year. I mean, only really 4 major debuts, I think, at least major to us, happened. The first one is a pretty heavy concept. It's the BMW i Vision D. When I first read it, I thought it was Vision ID, and I was like, ooh, Volkswagen, they're coming after your name there. But it turns out it's i Vision D. DEE stands for Digital Emotional Experience, I believe.
Sounds for we were really hunting for an acronym.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting because a lot of people are saying, if you look at the design of it, the front end actually, what they've done with the kidneys, instead of going vertical with them, they've gone wide horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me if you see this. People always think I'm crazy when I say these comparisons, but the front end of this looks like the original Fisker Karma to me. Just the way the grill is.
I could see a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see a little bit.
It's just the shape of the grill. It
Mm-hmm.
looks good.
I'm just curious what we're actually supposed to be seeing concept-wise, because it's so
Right.
concept car.
It is.
What is going to translate to BMWs that anybody can buy?
Well, people were saying that this, or somebody hinted at, or they maybe just came to the conclusion based on the presentation. They were like, oh, I think this might be the 3 Series replacement. And I could see that, but I don't feel like they'll replace the 3 Series outright. I think they will do what they're doing with the other stuff, have like the 3 Series and the i3 somehow. Because I
So
don't
they're
think they can
thinking
replace
the
it.
sort of the exterior shape is going to morph into a 3 Series shape, because that interior does not look production intent.
No,
by
but I think the
anything.
shape could lend itself to a 3 Series size because if you consider the EV platform, they could make it on the outside look like this, which looks actually smaller than the current 3 Series, like you said, but the interior will have the same amount of room because of the packaging. I feel like
Yeah.
they could pull that off. And this looks cool because it's retro but modern, kind of Hyundai Ioniq 5 style. Like it's just got some really cool, funky elements to it. I think the shape could make it to production. I think the front end
Yeah.
design can make it to production, unless Fisker slash Karma wants to fight that. But
Yeah, I could see the front end going, because it looks the interior is outlandish and concepty,
much,
but
yeah.
but the exterior actually seems pretty decent. And speaking of concepts that are also out there, we finally got a supposed glimpse into Ram's electric future, but that's also a little too concept car-y for my tastes as far as trying to read the tea leaves.
right, and they're saying apparently this is previewing the production model that they're going to reveal later this year. So if
I
that's
can
true,
believe that for the general shape on the outside. It's one of those.
Maybe.
I think it's the same thing with the other one. It's still very concepty on the interior.
well, if you can recall a majority of the crazy things it has on it, which do you think is guaranteed not to make it to production? One of the thing I think is the third row. I think that's a cool concept, but I don't know if they can actually do it without it being this just massive military style sized vehicle. Like,
Yeah, I think the third row is not going to make it. I just don't
Yeah.
think they will do that. I think that the split barn door tailgate is going to make it, because they already have something like that. I think the front end is probably going to make it as well. I think that is logical. They did say, which is kind of interesting here, that it's going to be a lot lower than people are thinking. So that sleek look is going to make it for aerodynamic reasons. So it looks like the hood and the bed height are kind of normative for a half-ton truck. The ride height looks a little bit lower, but then the cab, that is really slammed down, giving it much more of a passenger car seating sort of vibe. It is still a body-on-frame truck, which is important for some truck shoppers, and it's very different as a result versus what we see in the GM truck lineup that's coming up soon. The interior, that I don't know. Let me scroll through here to some of these interior photos. The big thing for me is the lack of an instrument cluster. I'm pretty sure they're going to give us one. The dashboard lighting and the ceiling lighting, I don't think those are going to make it either. But
I think they could bring the connection, the curve, the Tesla Model X style windshield to ceiling transition that
could
it
see
has.
that.
I think they feel like they could pull that off, maybe. But that's
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know if I would like that, but I could see them doing it. That I think is for me just a controversial personal feature. Not having an ability to block the light really bugs me in vehicles that just have that general design.
Right.
I think the center console and stuff like that's believable though.
Do you think the pass through from the front will make it?
I am curious about that. The pass through from the front makes sense because it is all one piece. So, because it's a body on frame vehicle, so the bed and the cab are separate. So no pass through to the bed in the way some folks might want is possible. But that should be possible since that's all one piece.
Right.
I just wonder why we need it. I'm not clear on that part.
Yeah. And it's probably going to be, I mean, we don't know, of course, till we find out, but this is making me think it's going to be Hummer weight wise. Like I feel like it's going to be closer to that.
I actually think go in the opposite direction. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot closer to Lightning.
Okay.
Because the body on frame nature of the vehicle actually kind of helps out versus what we've seen in the Hummer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's this sort of general perception in the automotive industry that body on frame always means heavier, but I think that Ford has proven that that's not always the case. Hummer and the Chevy Silverado EV, from the numbers we've been able to sort of divine so far, very strangely heavy due to some of the design constraints around that enormous battery, etc. And I
Right.
don't think that we're going to see that same weight thing play out here with this. I'm guessing it's going to be heavy, probably maybe 1,400 pounds, 1,500 pounds heavier than a regular Ram,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly significantly lighter than we find in the GM trucks. It's worth noting that Rivian's also a body-on-frame truck, and it's also considerably lighter than the Chevy and the Hummer, even though it's a steel vehicle. It's about 7,000 pounds-ish. I'm really intrigued to see what the range extending model is like, because
Mm-hmm.
there is going to be a plug-in hybrid version of this truck. Ram has been sending those smoke signals for quite some time.
Right. Yeah.
I'm really intrigued by that because I think that for a pickup truck shopper that really is wanting to go green, but also has a necessity or a desire to tow or off-road or these sorts of things or adventure or whatever, that may help move some people into a reduced emissions vehicle, because you wouldn't have that same sort of range anxiety and worry if this had one of their turbocharged inline sixes under the hood and you could just drive 1,000 miles if you wanted to.
Yeah, and well, the point of CES this year was not to have any internal combustion vehicles, and the next thing that was shown off was the Volkswagen ID.7, but they still had camouflage on it, so this wasn't a
Yeah.
full reveal. They had a car there with their digital camo wrap on it, but you could get you had a good idea of the size and the overall shape and everything, and they've shown pictures of the interior.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've had some time to look at that. What do you take from one, calling it the ID.7? So apparently this will be the flagship. They're going to do it potentially Mercedes-Benz style, where there's the EQS and the EQS SUV. I've just been
Mm-hmm.
reading some rumors that this will be the ID.7, but then there will be like an SUV version of the ID.7.
Yeah.
So yeah, fun.
The naming scheme I don't quite get. I mean, it's just like Hyundai with the Ioniq 5, 6, blah, 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 whatever we're going to have next. And is this giving you Ioniq 6 vibes? Because I kind of get some.
I think it looks way bigger, especially in the greenhouse, because the Ioniq. Oh, you mean 5 or 6?
A 6,
Yeah,
yeah.
6. The 6 is it prioritizes the aerodynamics so much that I feel like just it swoops much lower in the back than this. This seems to have a much larger arc over the passengers. I feel like there's going to be a lot more. Visually, it looks like there will be more rear headroom than the Ioniq 6. I sat in the back of one at the LA Auto Show, and I was like, it's getting up. Like, I'm getting cramped. I'm only 5'9", so I had like maybe 1 inch left. But you do the math. You would have been
It gives me like a little. The scale is a little bit difficult to really determine here, but I do kind of see maybe a little bit of Volkswagen Bug in a way, in the fact that it does have this definite hood, and then it has a very round passenger section.
Yeah.
But it also has that little wing at the back. That's a little Ioniq 6y. I'm interested to see how this sells, because sedan sales aren't on fire in America at all.
No.
And now we're going to get 2 electric sedans. So how do those fit in, and why would someone want one versus the more practical ID whatever? I don't know.
Yeah. And then finally, I guess the last major thing, what was widely reported as the Sony car was actually the Sony Honda car, as we all know, actually. They brought the first prototype vehicle they've been working on together, and then they gave us a brand name, no model name. So this car is just the Afeela for now, but they're going to apparently give it a name later on. And they've got plenty of time, because they said it won't be on sale or it won't be delivered here until early 2026. So
Yep.
very
Yep.
far off, very early prototype. A lot of things will not make it to production, but it's such a simple design that I feel like not much has to change. So
Yeah, I agree. It looks very production intent, to be honest, as far
yeah,
as concept cars go. The only thing that they would really need to change is the digital side view mirrors. That would be about
right,
it.
right.
And this is of course going to be built on the Honda platform, not the Honda GM thingy with the
Right.
Ultium batteries. So lots of strange decisions there going on at
Yeah.
Honda in a way. I'm just not sure I'm a feeling the name.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's not the worst name I've ever heard, but I'm not sure what a Fila is supposed to be.
Yeah. Did they at all? I didn't watch the presentation. Did they explain it? Did
I'm
anybody get
sure
that?
they did, but I tuned that part out.
Yeah. It just doesn't make. Yeah. It's like that's what we decided. We're going with
Yeah,
that.
just
Yeah.
just going with a feeling it up.
I
So
feel there
yeah,
can be so many. It's going to be in so many songs. It's going to become
I
part of so many songs.
part of me really hopes that they do call it Nafila because
Yeah.
why not? Um, It'll be a little. It's unsure as to how this Sony Honda partnership is going to play out for those that are just hearing about this for the first time. Sony and
Yeah.
Honda are teaming up to do a car. Sony's doing the electronics part. Clearly, Honda's doing the car part. So lots of screens on the inside, Sony interface. And supposedly they should be able to be serviced at a Honda dealer, but Honda dealers are a little upset that they appear to be not in the sales side of the car yet, although no sure thing has been set as far as how they will be sold. So that's still up in the air. It looks like some Honda dealers may be readying lawsuits, however, to try and make sure that they could sell Afilas.
Well, I guess I'd be upset, but it's a whole new brand, so I feel like they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, if they need to rely on Honda like Genesis is relying on Hyundai dealerships, I guess for the time being that'll be all right. But after a while, that brand name deserves its own separate experience. I feel like.
Yeah, it's that question of, if it gets branded as a Sony Honda, then why not take it to the Honda place? It's not like you
Yeah.
could take it to the Sony store.
No,
Are there Sony stores?
there used to be. I don't
Oh.
know if there are anymore.
Yeah,
I went to the one in New York City. It was cool.
Oh,
But-
okay. You can go get your Vio fixed.
Well, that
and-
was 2007. So
yeah.
I'm not
Get your
sure if
Vio
it's still
repaired
there.
and your Afila installed, and yep. Interesting that the companies involved here are companies that are both right now, I think, in a way, struggling for a direction. And I hate to say this
Right.
about Honda because I've loved lots of Hondas for a while, but some of the Honda models do come across as struggling for direction right now. And
Right.
Sony is a brand that definitely has been struggling, for direction themselves. This is not the era of Walkman or Discman anymore. The whole Vio thing didn't exactly set the world on fire.
Yeah, I would say Sony is the remaining things Sony is appreciated for now. Things that are left: PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
would say the TVs are pretty well
But
respected. I would say.
who buys a Sony TV anymore?
It's true. They're not.
I
As
mean,
popular,
I
but
loved
they're all
my
really
Sony.
expensive.
I was a dedicated Sony fanboy. I had the Sony CD players and the Walkmans and the Discmans. I had a mini disc player, for heaven's sake. Like who on their right mind would buy a disc, a Discman, a mini disc player recorder? I had a recorder too with a little keyboard that you could
Wow.
type in there. It was so cool.
Can't
And I had the Sony flat CRT TVs because those were bitchin', man.
Yeah.
But now you can get a flat screen TV with Roku built in for like $100. So who cares?
Yeah.
In my mind, somehow that makes Sony a company that enables technology, but not necessarily a technology company. I mean, there's obviously tech involved in a camera or camcorder. Again,
Yeah.
we use them here to record, the things that you're watching. But yeah, the one thing I hate about my Sony camera is the user interface.
Yeah.
And the one thing I hated about lots of Sony products I had before was the user interface, and that's what
Yeah.
they're supposed to be tasked with doing in the Sony Honda.
Well, they're having help. I think AMD is one of the people.
It's true.
Yeah, AMD's got the processing, I think. And then, what was it called?
But let's be honest. I mean, they should be having Google or Apple help them with the user interface, because if you think software user interface pleasing things, it's the people that make these things. That's who's got the interface down.
Do you think the Apple Car is actually happening?
No.
No.
I think that's a pet project to pour billions of dollars into because Apple's swimming in cash and they have no idea what to do with it. But they certainly don't want to return it to shareholders. That's a conversation for a future episode.
Absolutely. Something we reported on, something we discussed a couple weeks ago was a leak about the hybrid Corvette. Turns out we have official word that they are going to reveal the Corvette E-Ray, which is the official name, capital E-Ray, E-Ray. They're going to reveal it on January 17th. So we'll get all the information on it. It has stealth mode.
Yes.
I assume that's going to be electric motors only doing something to be quiet. I don't know.
I'm guessing so that way you can get out of your neighborhood HOA, without them, yelling at you in the night. So that's intriguing. I mean, it makes sense that Corvette needs to go hybrid or plug-in hybrid as technology moves on and green things move on. Speaking of plug-in hybrids, we should reveal the results of our plug-in hybrid survey, which I was not happy with. Let's just be upfront. Mitsubishi Outlander actually ended up winning. 951 votes. There were a total of 2,900 votes cast. We tried to move everybody over to Survey Planet so we could get things from all outlets together. And that resulted in fewer responses than we had separately on surveys, but it made the smushing of data easier here. Runner-up was Kia Sportage. Runner-up from there was Kia Niro. And I would say it's interesting, and I think we're going to do a runoff vote for two big reasons here. The first one is Hyundai and Kia have 4 vehicles that use the same plug-in hybrid system. I mean, they're very similar. So it's Sportage, Sorento, Santa Fe, and Tucson, all the same plug-in hybrid system. They all got very even numbers of votes, other than Sportage. Sportage got the highest in that group. So I'm curious as to how many people were maybe splitting their votes because they weren't sure which of these they wanted to do. And how many votes were maybe, I hate to say it, a bit of morbid curiosity about Mitsubishi.
Sure. If I had voted, which I didn't want to skew anything.
You didn't vote?
I didn't vote. I'm sorry.
That's what's, you young people, you just don't vote anymore.
Well, I will be, quick aside, you're talking about how you get mail-in surveys and things like that, and that's how a lot of research is done. I never received stuff like that. I will get the YouTube ad, though, that's like, we answer this quick survey. I will always do that. But I never get anything in the paper or in the mail.
I was say, you get a paper? What? How old are you?
Not a paper, no.
No, actually, I shouldn't throw the young people under the bus because apparently Zillennials are actually voting at higher rates per age group than baby boomers. So, not all the Zillennials are even old enough to vote. But at any rate, you did not, so I'm going to throw you under the bus there. So, Mitsubishi Outlander, is that a yay or a nay from you on Outlander, and why?
I'd say yay. I mean, look, you'll be the only one around driving one, so you'll stand out. It's a cool looking car to me.
I do like the look.
You can, because I know you will, because you'll be responsible with it. But I'm pretty sure you'll charge it to the point where you won't have to deal with the hybrid part of it, the hybrid downfalls of it, as often as the average person who just buys these with no idea what they're doing.
That's honestly my only complaint about the Mitsubishi is its hybrid fuel economy. Yeah, because it is. Let's be frank, it's bad. It is less efficient than the non-hybrid platform mate, the Nissan Rogue. It's less efficient than the regular Mitsubishi Outlander. And that's a bummer to me, really, because Sorento is bigger and it has a mechanical all-wheel drive system, and it is 10 miles per gallon more fuel efficient. Yeah. That's a bummer on the Outlander front. According to the website here, it is 38 miles, so just under 40. The Sorento is, of course, less. It is 32 miles, so a decent amount less, 6 miles-ish. Both would get me home and to the office on approximately a charge. It's probably better likelihood on the Outlander for actually doing that. But that day that you can't charge, the Outlander's going to use a lot more gas.
Yeah. Do you know what the fuel tank sizes are?
I do not, but let's see here. So the answer here is the Sorento has a 12.4 gallon gas tank. The Outlander plug-in hybrid has just an 11.3 gallon gas tank. So it is a decent amount smaller. When you combine that with the 26 miles per gallon, it's not going to go as far on a gas tank. Although I don't actually think that's a problem, because you just fill the gas tank. Who drives more than 300 miles? I don't care about bladder busting range. I just want to, I can pee. That's fine. I might want to stop at Taco Bell and get a taco or something. So let us know down there in the comment section. And, of course, be sure and stay tuned because there will be additional voting coming up soon. I think we're going to make it a 3-way final vote here because the split on Nero surprised me. Nero beat out Escape. It beat out Sorento, Santa Fe, and Tucson. For the number 3 spot. So I think we're going to narrow it down to the top 3 different drivetrains, 3 different vehicles, 3 different really sized vehicles as well. So I think it's fair. Yeah. Outlander is a small 3-row. Sportage is a large 2-row. Nero is, of course, a subcompact front-wheel drive thing. It's the outlier, but it's ultra efficient. So stay tuned for that. And out of those 3, what would be your vote if we could actually get you to vote?
I just don't like the look of the Sportage. It's warmed up. I've warmed up to it a little bit because I've seen them a lot here. So I'm seeing them more, and I'm more comfortable with the front end than I was at first. But I'm not sure.
It's not my favorite look.
It's still not my favorite thing on the list design-wise, no. So I guess
the best part about being inside the Sportage is that you can't see the outside from the inside.
And it's a nice place to be on the inside for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't know. What was your answer to this? I can't decide. I'm torn.
I am really torn as well because I do like the efficiency of the Nero. It is fantastically efficient. On my yearly commute, if I only drove the Nero plug-in hybrid, plugged it in at the office and at home, it has a tiny battery, so I'd easily be able to charge it at home because of that high efficiency. I would only use 85 gallons of gasoline to drive 16,500 miles.
Yeah.
So that is fantastic. In any of the others, I would definitely be using a lot more because, A, they're a lot less efficient on electricity, and that results in using obviously more resources, period. They're also less efficient on gasoline. But any of the others really at home, I probably couldn't charge it, for maybe 4 months of the year. I just wouldn't have enough energy since I live off-grid to do that. And the Nero really shrinks that window to maybe just December and January where I couldn't charge it.
You still have the EV6 too, so I feel like people want to see a different brand.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the reasons that in this initial process I didn't want a Kia or Hyundai. I wanted to just wipe them off the list.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of feedback from people writing in saying they wanted us to try specifically a plug-in hybrid, which we've never tried before.
Yeah.
And that led us down this road because I don't want to spend an arm and a leg on a plug-in hybrid. There are a lot of luxury car plug-in hybrids that are fantastic that I love. The Audi Q5 is excellent. Volvo's plug-in hybrids are great. BMWs are lovely. However, they're all expensive. And when it comes to plug-in hybrids under $50,000, it's basically a Kia Hyundai party with a little bit of Ford and a little bit of Mitsubishi.
I guess and
a minivan.
Yeah. I think I would pick the Nero.
Yeah. I kind of lean towards Nero. The thing that I dislike about the Nero is that the plug-in hybrid can't get the full LCD instrument cluster. It's a partial.
Right, yeah.
Little bummer there. But you
can
in the EV.
It's a flat surface, so it kind of fools you into thinking it is at first, and then you're like, it's not.
And then, and then you feel cheated.
Yeah, it's like, why?
Yeah.
I paid good money for this.
And then the other thing is no all-wheel drive and manual passenger seat. But I could live with that. I think that is a solid option because the efficiency is fantastic.
Is it too early to add the Prius Prime to the list that we haven't driven it or we know much about it yet?
I think it's too early in a way because the initial plan was to try and have this sealed up before the end of January. We might not hit that deadline, but we're going to be somewhat close.
Yeah.
Also, I am not that thrilled with some aspects of the Prius, to be honest. The interior room is really limited. The cargo area shrunk a great deal. And this particular long-term vehicle for us is probably going to be shared with the other side of the business that's on that side of the wall over there. So we might actually try and keep this one for more of a 2 to 3 year term. And that means it needs to have enough storage space to actually do the things that the materials engineering business needs to do. So, practical storage space is definitely a consideration, I think, here.
Would you be getting a fully loaded Outlander if you got one?
No, I think we would be getting the base Outlander. We would be getting maybe a mid-level trim Sportage or a top-of-the-line Nero plug-in to try and keep things around the same price point. $40,000 is sort of the target here. We want something that's under the average new car price in America. Nero really wins the race there because you could Nero for quite a bit less than the others. And that really is, the major advantage for something in this space that is a plug-in vehicle is you could Nero plug-in for 33.9, somewhere around there. Yeah. You could Outlander for about $40,000. The Sportage Sorento is a little bit more expensive, but any of these vehicles you can get for less than the price of the average new electric car in America. Yeah. You aren't going to get your gasoline consumption to zero, but you're going to have a significant impact on it. The average commuter is probably going to be spending, maybe $500 a year on gasoline, something like that. You're going to be consuming under 100 gallons if you're the average commute profile in North America. So that's the logic here is proving that there are alternatives that are not cold turkey on EV. You won't have the worry about range anxiety. You won't have the worry about how much range do I have left after 5 years, etc. Right. And they're generally speaking going to be easy to live with.
So Buick is a brand that we don't talk about too much, and that's mainly due to the fact that they're kind of fading into the background in terms of consumer interest, but they're trying to rectify that. There are a couple of spy shots floating around from a few different vehicles and some actual official photos from cars that I think we can now close to confirm are coming to the United States. The first one is the Invista. Have you had a chance to look at that one?
I have seen the Invista, and I really like the look. Buick's transformation is interesting to me because in the U.S., Buick needed to still exist because the average buyer is not actually old and living in the U.S. The average Buick buyer is young and living in China, so it's a big brand there. And in order to sell on its Americanness, they couldn't cancel it in the U.S. So it's had this life support in a way from General Motors corporate in the U.S. for largely that marketing reason. And then for a while, it was where GM was tossing their European models. Opals were going to Buick land. Right. But now, of course, Opel is part of the Stellantis portfolio, so it's with Chrysler. So they can't jam Chryslers with Buick logos on them. So now we're getting, this interesting mix of sort of Asian Buicks coming over. So the Invista is a Chinese market model. I really like the look. I like the sleek design. It's probably going to be built either in China or in South Korea, where the current Encore is made. And it may actually even be related to the Encore. And then it looks like we're going to get an electric Buick, right?
Yeah, so their whole electric lineup is going to be called Electra, which harkens back to the old model from the last century.
That's a good name.
It is a good name. It's perfect, honestly. And so they're going to run with that. They're going to do a whole family of cars like Ioniq. They're going to do that. So we've got the first model that's coming to the United States, apparently, is the Electra E4. So all the models will be Electra E something. Perhaps the E will change to a different letter depending on the style of vehicle or the performance. Maybe we don't know yet because it's very early. But the E5 or the E4, is also a very low to the ground, swoopy. I don't know. It's an interesting look. I don't know if it reminds me of the first generation Mercedes-Benz GLA.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pop a picture up there for people that are on the YouTubes here to take a look at. It definitely is in keeping with the Invista and some of the other designs that we've seen from Buick for a while. It looks a little bit less practical than I thought. I kind of hoped it would well, I know GM hates to be reminded of these days, but I'd kind of hoped it would be more of a badge-engineered Blazer or Equinox EV, but it actually is going to be quite a unique look, built on the same common, of course, Ultium platform as those other vehicles, but it's going to have a much swoopier, sexier style.
Yeah, and so apparently this is the one we're getting, but the one we're not getting, it fits the description you're talking about, the E5.
Yes.
That one. It's the boxy-looking one that looks like it would be similarly sized to the Equinox. So I don't know. Maybe eventually we'll get that one, but that one seems perfect for our market. I don't know why that's not coming here.
Yeah, I too am surprised because it seems like it would be the logical choice. I'm wondering if they think that it's too samey, or maybe they're just waiting to see how it goes. Since it is built on the Ultium platform, theoretically they could build it in the U.S. factory.
Yeah, and one last note about these designs. The front end is inspired by that, I think it was the Wildcat concept that they showed last year. They've really just taken it and run with it. Do you like this look for Buick? Or for me, I'm struggling to love it. I don't love it. I don't know why.
It gives me a little bit of Hyundai Kona mixed with Honda, but I don't think it's a bad mix. I think it's it's not as distinctive as I would have thought it would have been, but it also is not offensive in any way. So I think it's going to blend in fairly well.
Yeah, and it has one little styling element, the way they do the C pillar or the D pillar with that black hash line that comes out from the window surround. That'll be identifiable. People will be like, "Oh, I know what that is."
That gives me some European, maybe slightly Mazda-esque, feel here and there. Not a bad thing to be reminded of. And the back end is very sleek. That's probably the best way to describe the design. It's very sleek. It's not overdone. It's definitely a restrained kind of thing.
Yeah. So we'll see. We don't know anything about when of these are coming here. We know the E4 is probably coming here for sure. Probably for sure. That's the one that people are thinking is coming here first, at least. Yeah. We don't know when. So,
yeah, the future looks electrified, but are you feeling it? I'm just not. I don't know yet. Is that too punny? Sorry, everybody.
Too soon.
You're too soon. Well, be sure and stay tuned for the survey coming up. Find us over on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all those other places. You can, of course, hit the subscribe button. And if you are watching the video or the podcast, be sure and subscribe to the other side so you can see our pretty faces. Or if you don't care for the way we look because apparently Brian hasn't cut his hair in a while, just listen to the audio format only. So we will see all of you later.
See you.